Thank you for listening to Scandinavian Crimes Podcast. Be sure to check out the episode links and be part of our other social media platforms where you can leave a topic suggestion or even share some of your insights regarding the subject matter of the episode. We will always do our best to provide a well-researched episode, but sometimes due to limited access to information and translation issues, some information can be lost. It is therefore good to do your own research and get a deeper understanding of a case of your own interest. So with that all said, let us start today's episode.
Welcome to Scandinavian Crimes. My name is Devante, and say hello to my lovely co-host Delila.
Hello everyone.
And on this podcast, we will cover famous Scandinavian criminals who made their mark throughout Scandinavian history. So today's story is a little trippy actually. It's a mix of mental health related issues with a dash of murder. And what makes this even crazy, it's kind of similar to instances of like mass hysteria and kind of those kind of situations, but it's a little more nuanced and a little more rare. But it's kind of like this transferable fear between two people who just happen to be sisters. So sit back and enjoy this story because it's definitely an interesting one. So today we're covering the story of Ursula and Sabina Eriksson. Sabina Eriksson and her identical twin sister Ursula Eriksson were born in Sweden on the 3rd of November 1967 and grew up in Sunne, Värmland. In their youth, there was no apparent history of mental health issues or criminal convictions, and by 2000, Ursula was living in the United States while Sabina was living in Mallow, County Cork, Ireland with her spouse and her 2 children. Ursula visited Sabina on Friday, 16th May 2008, but for some reason that was completely unclear, the sisters secretly departed Sabina's home for Liverpool, England. Probably traveling by ferry, they arrived in Liverpool around 8:30 a.m. on Saturday and went to St. Anne Street Police Station, apparently in order to report concerns over safety of Sabina's children. Liverpool police contacted Dublin to follow up on a request, learning that Sabina had a fight with her partner the previous night. At around 11:30 a.m. that morning, the pair then boarded a National Express coach headed to London. A police report stated that the twins suddenly disembarked from the bus at Kiel Service at motorway service station as they were not feeling very well. The driver of the bus, however, said that he left them at Kiel Services even though it was not a scheduled rest stop at around 1 p.m. after becoming suspicious of their erratic behavior. He noticed the twins clinging to their bags slightly and did not let them reboard because they refused to let him search their bags for illegal items. The manager of the service station was informed and was also feeling suspicious of the pair's demeanor and movements as well as their fixation with their bag, so she called the police. Officers arrived to talk to them but left after saying that the woman seemed harmless. As seen on a closed-circuit television, the pair departed the services on foot and began to walk down the central reservation of the M6 before attempting to cross it, causing chaos to the traffic and picking up minor injuries in the attempt. Sabina had been struck by a vehicle as well. The elder brother claimed in Swedish newspapers that his sisters were fleeing from maniacs who were chasing them. Highway agency officers responded to the incidents and police from the Central Motorway Police Group were called to assist. The police were also accompanied by a small television crew who happened to be filming Motorway Cops with the officers, which, for those of you who may not know, was a TV show that was currently in production at that time. Standing on the north direction hard shoulder of the motorway, the police were being apprised of the situation when, without warning, Ursula broke free and ran into the side of the oncoming Mercedes-Benz truck traveling at around 56 miles per hour, and for everyone in Europe, that's 90 kilometers per hour. Sabina then quickly followed her sister into the road and was hit head-on by a Volkswagen traveling at high speeds as well. Despite both of them being struck by vehicles, they both survive. Ursula was immobilized as a truck had crushed her legs, and Sabina spent 15 minutes unconscious. The pair were treated by paramedics, however, Ursula resisted medical aid by spitting, scratching, and screaming. Ursula told the policeman restraining her, "I recognize you. I know you're not real." And Sabina, now conscious, shouted, "They're going to steal our organs." To the surprise of the police, Sabina got to her feet despite attempts to persuade her to stay on the ground. Sabina started screaming for help and calling for the police even though they were present, then hit an officer in the face before running into traffic on the other side of the motorway yet again. Emergency workers and several members of the public caught up with her, restrained her, and carried her to a waiting ambulance, at which point she was handcuffed and sedated. Given the similarities of their behaviors, a suicide pact or drug use was quickly suspected. Ursula was taken to the hospital by air ambulance. Sabina was taken to the hospital where, despite her ordeal and apparent lack of concern over her sister's injury, she soon became calmer and controlled and was released 5 hours later. In police custody, she remained relaxed, and while being processed, she told an officer, "We say in Sweden that an accident really comes along. Usually at least one more follows, maybe two." That's a very odd statement. On May 19, 2008, Sabina was released from court without a full psychiatric evaluation, having pleaded guilty to her charges of trespass on the motorway and hitting a police officer. The court sentenced her to 1 day in custody, which she had been deemed to have served, having spent a full night in police custody. Leaving the court, Sabina began to wander the streets of Stoke-on-Trent, trying to locate her sister in the hospital and carrying her possessions in a clear plastic bag given to her by the police. She was also wearing her sister's green top. At 7 p.m., 2 local men spotted Sabina while walking their dog on Christchurch Street, Fenton. One of the men was a 54-year-old Glenn Hollinshead, a self-employed welder, qualified paramedic, and former RAF airman, and the other was a friend, Peter Malloy. Sabina appeared friendly and stroked the dog as they struck up conversation. Although friendly, Sabina appeared to have been behaving very nervously, which worried Malloy. Sabina asked the 2 men for directions to any nearby bed and breakfast or hotels. Hollinshead took pity on her and instead offered to take her back to his house at nearby Duke Street. Sabina accepted and relaxed, and she began to relate how she was trying to locate her hospitalized sister. Back at the house over drinks, her odd behavior continued as she constantly got up and looked out the window, leading Malloy to assume that she had run away from an abusive partner. She appeared paranoid too, offering the men cigarettes only to quickly snatch them out their mouths, claiming that they may be poisoned. Shortly before midnight, Malloy left and Sabina stayed the night. The next day around midday, Hollinshead called his brother regarding local hospitals in order to locate Sabina's sister Ursula. At 7:40 p.m., while a meal was being prepared, Hollinshead left the house to ask a neighbor for tea bags and then went back inside. 1 minute later, he staggered back outside, now bleeding, and told him, "She stabbed me," before collapsing to the ground and quickly dying from his injuries. His last words before he died allegedly were, "Look after my dog for me." As the neighbor dialed 999, which to fellow Americans that's essentially 911, Sabina fled the premises and was caught on the run by a nearby CCTV. She ran out of the house with a hammer, periodically hitting herself over the head with it. A passing motorist saw this and decided to tackle her in an attempt to take control of the hammer. While wrestling with him, Sabina screamed and took the roof tile out of her pocket and struck him in the back of the head with it, stunning him temporarily, of course. By this time, paramedics have found her and given chase. The pursuit ended at Heron Cross, with Sabina jumped from a 12-meter, which is a 40-foot high, bridge onto the A50, breaking both ankles and fracturing her skull in the fall. She was taken to the hospital. On June 6, 2008, Sabina was arrested while recovering at the University Hospital of North Staffordshire and was discharged in a wheelchair on September 11, 2008, at which point she was taken into custody and charged with murder the same day. Ursula was also released from the hospital in September and relocated uneventfully back to Sweden and then to the US. The trial was scheduled for February 2009 but was adjourned after the court encountered difficulties in obtaining her medical records from Sweden. The trial was then scheduled to start the 1st of September in 2009. Sabina pleaded guilty to manslaughter with diminished responsibility on September 2, 2009, having stabbed her victim 5 times with a kitchen knife. At no point during the interrogation or during the trial did she explain her actions, only replying no comment to extensive police questioning. Similarly, at the time was a video from the M6 used as evidence in the court. Both the prosecution and the defense claimed that Sabina was insane at the time of the killing, although she had become sane again by the time of her trial. The defense counsel in the trial claimed that Eriksson was a secondary sufferer of folie à deux. And for those of you who may not know what that is, the definition of it is simply just, it's a mental disorder that can affect two or more individuals. Usually they're members of the same family, but in very, very, very rare cases can affect two separate individuals who are not related as well. It's kind of a shared hysteria or shared kind of hallucinations, kind of like schizophrenic kind of behaviors that two people can experience together, collectively. Justice Saunders concluded that Sabina had a low level of culpability for her actions. According to Justice Sanders, quote, "I understand that this sentence will seem entirely inadequate to the relatives of the deceased. However, I have been sentenced on the basis that the reason for the killing was mental illness and therefore the culpability of the defendant is low. Therefore, the sentence I have passed is designed to protect the public. It is not designed to reflect the grief that relatives have suffered or measure the value of Mr. Hollinshead's life. No sentence that I could pass could do that. It is a sentence which I hope fairly measures a truly tragic event. Sabina was suffering from delusions which she believed to be true and they dictated her behavior. It is not one of those cases where the defendant could have been doing something to avoid the onset." End quote. Sabina was sentenced to 5 years in prison and was sent to Bronzefield Women's Prison, where she turned to Christianity. Having already spent 439 days in custody before sentencing, this left her first eligible for release in 2011. Many questions were left unanswered. Some called for the investigation into the way the criminal justice system handled the matter, including Peter Malloy. Glenn Hollinshead's brother Gary was critical of the justice system, which he viewed as enabling the murderer, stating, quote, "We don't hold her responsible, the same as we wouldn't hold a rabid dog for biting someone. She is ill and to a large degree not responsible for her actions, but her mental disorder should have been recognized much earlier. I do question the criminal justice system for allowing someone like this to be let out when she is capable of committing such crimes. Her mental condition should have been properly assessed after what she did on the motorway and the experiences of the police as well. Her mental disorder should have been picked up prior to her being let out in the community. Glenn saw Eriksson in distress and was trying to help. He wasn't slow in coming forward to help somebody in distress. It was in his nature. He was trying to help. He would help anybody. If he saw a fight in the street and a guy was losing, he would help." End quote. After hearing all that, this is the story of Ursula and Sabina Eriksson. There you go.
That was really interesting. There are a lot of components here that I wanted to discuss as well. But first of all, I wanted to discuss the thing about Sabina's family. Because when Ursula visited her and her family, they all of a sudden ran away from there. And we didn't hear anything about her family, or only that the husband or her boyfriend, or I don't know what their relationship they had.
I believe it's the husband.
Yeah, that they were fighting. And that was about it. We don't really know what happened there. And we don't even know what happened with the family. And how they were involved in all of this. Like, to me, I thought that she killed them, and or both of them killed them in their Mania episode. Either way, and that's why I had a theory in the beginning that maybe she killed. That's why they were acting so weird and different. But now that I listen to the whole thing, it's like, okay, it's probably that they had these mental disorders. That she had like also a rare condition and such. I thought that those were really interesting theories. But my question is more that, did she in the end actually get like a proper evaluation and a proper diagnosis, and also had twin sister? Or was it like theories only because they couldn't really decide what it was? If you get what I mean.
I think that at least from the information that we saw like online, I don't think like they properly evaluated them both, because I think individually, Sabina was freed, and then Ursula was also at some point kind of let go before I think Sabina was reapprehended only because she had killed somebody. So even though they had to recognize that something was off, they never truly evaluated her until she had killed somebody. And then that's when they kind of like looked into it and had, I guess, assumed or evaluated that they had that these shared delusions of being kind of in fear for their lives. Like they thought like they were being watched, they were being targeted. What I'm mostly curious about is like if they have no history of mental health, because they didn't mention that in the beginning of the story. They was like, okay, so they have no history of mental health, no history of any of that. What triggered over a sudden just for like their brain to be like, oh wow, I'm being targeted? And it just kicked in one day, because it seemed like literally the day before, you know, that first day of the story, which was what, like it was like what, September 8th or something like that.
Yeah, that's also very interesting. I wonder if the fight started it, or because it sounded like the sisters lived together, then they moved to different countries, and then all of a sudden when both of them got reunited, it triggered.
Yeah, that's what seems like what happened. Like, but also I think if we're gonna believe everything the story tells us, I think that there's a chance that, let's say they were experiencing, or I believe Sabina was experiencing abuse from her husband, or was it Ursula? I forget which one. But I think one of them were experiencing abuse. Then the other sister came to help the sister. But I think the trauma could have triggered something, because we don't know anything about their childhood either, because maybe they could have came from an abusive home, and sometimes suppressing certain emotions can cause things to trigger when you encounter them again. And so that could be a possibility as well, because it was, if it was just like simply one sister was dealing with abuse, then the chances of them both triggering, even though one experienced abuse and the other didn't, doesn't seem very like, at least likely. So I'm assuming, this is just an assumption here, that maybe to some level they both had experienced some sort of abuse, but they did say that they couldn't verify their previous history, like no mental health, their at-home situation they had trouble getting, so they had no idea what they was walking into really. So they could have already had issues.
However, there were a lot of signs, and that's also what I wanted to discuss about how the police, in the beginning, everything started that they both were traveling from, what was it, Ireland, I guess, and they went to England, right? And the bus chauffeur and actually noticed that they behaved weirdly. They called the police. The police just said that, oh, it's nothing, they're fine. But I think that you should properly report how, you know, instead of minimizing, pick up all the signs, because they can be used in evidence. And then later on how they ran into the motorway. I thought also that that's not something that anyone would do in their right mind. They just like run in front of a car like that. Right. And like, of course, if you want to escape, you're like, oh, I'm going to run away. Usually you try not to run into a car. You try to like, I don't know. There's, I can like, of course, maybe they were afraid, they wanted to run away. Sure. But I wouldn't say that they were in the right mind to just like run into a car that drive past like, what was it? 90.
It was 56 miles per hour, but 90 kilometers, yeah.
So that's another sign. And also how they talked when they were in the, by the way, props for them for being alive after that, because like that's crazy.
Yeah, but crazy people always have, you know, extra lives.
And also how Sabina lived through so many things. Like she jumped from the bridge of like 12 meters.
Yeah, broke both her ankles and fractured her skull.
Yeah, that's crazy. That I don't even know how they can be alive, honestly. But I thought there were a lot of signs that just they didn't really consider to be a problem, because of her Sabina specifically, kind of went back and forth between being stable, I guess, as they said, or being mentally like in an episode. which also made this case a lot harder, but we can see the signs. Also how they were delusional in the hospital, saying she's recognizing the police, and kind of like and also the brother saying that they have the episode again, and they feel like they're running away from maniacs or something. Like I felt like he said that. Didn't he say that that they had their mental?
Yeah, that they were running away from somebody, like these crazy people, which did raise a question in my head, because I'm thinking, like, is it possible that they all do have like this shared delusion or some sort of, like I said, mental issue? But like I said, there was no paper trail of it because they could not get access to their medical records since they weren't from the area.
Yeah.
Like, maybe that was something, because like they had a brother who kind of confirmed their delusions in a certain kind of way.
Yeah.
Which I find odd, especially because he wasn't really involved. Like, he wasn't really there. It was like an after statement given after the situations already had happened. So I don't know if he was defending them, or maybe there was something to it, even though I'm pretty sure it was all caught on CCT as well as on the cameras, because part of it was because of the camera crew. So apparently there was delusion, but I do think, and I'm pretty sure we'll both agree on this one, there was probably a trigger.
It was
of some sort of past trauma, and then something
they were
caused them to
completely normal lives the whole time, and then the sister Ursula and Sabina got together, and then something happened. She started to fight with her husband. I don't know if she started before Ursula came or after. Either way, it feels like a trigger. Something triggered. I don't know if it's like it was them being reunited that triggered it, or if it was something else. But I
mean, it's entirely possible that could be
because when she was
each other.
When they were separated, she seemed to be fine, right? Like in the trial and everything, she was not like that. But then when she's looking for her sister again,
that's when it seems like she starts spiraling.
Whenever she thinks of the sister, it feels like something is just like triggering. That's just what of the information that we have, that's how I feel, that it's something like that or something. I don't know. It's very trippy. This case is really trippy.
I think that I'm going to take a stab in the dark here, which I think is a great title for a horror movie, Stab in the Dark. What I think is going to happen, what I think happened is kind of like you said. I'm going to combine all our theories because I think there's a chance that all of these are true. So I think that Sabina, if I remember correctly, she was the one who was going through abuse with her husband. So, she was dealing with issues at home, and I think she was already kind of on edge. And then her and her sister have already experienced some sort of trauma, abuse, or something that kind of had them dealing with it, but they kind of were keeping it at bay. And then them reuniting together and kind of seeing each other, after they've been separated for however long. Maybe they weren't separated for that long, but maybe the circumstances in which they were united and then seeing each other in combination was a catalyst to their quickly declining mental health.
Yeah.
And after that, that's when everything started to transpire due to the combination of seeing each other and the abuse that she was dealing with at home. And
or that just meeting her sister can trigger the abuse they might have had in their own household when they were younger. That could have been. Like it could be, like, we don't really know, but it could be an abuse trigger. Either way, both theories are really could be the case. I think that's it seems logical, but we're not psychiatrists. we don't, like, we only go with what we have and what we think would be reasonable. But I just want to end with something that I thought was really well said from Justice Saunders, that the way he sentenced was that he wanted to make sure that this wouldn't happen again to the public, rather than only thinking about the victim and the victim's family. But he tried to, like, he said something, like, I thought the way he said it was very logical, and
yeah,
because both of them were somehow
it wasn't nobody. Well, he was, I think, like, the quote, I'm not going to say quote line for line, but he was saying, like, he didn't put a price on the victim's life, but he also had to take in consideration that they were also victims because they didn't do it with harmful intent. They were mentally ill. You know, they themselves were victims of something they had no control over. No matter what they did, it would have happened to someone else anyway. So it was no one's fault, and he wanted to make sure he didn't like
one part
diminish
of me,
the impact.
One part of me don't want to minimize a crime like this,
right?
But another part of me is like, I thought his sentencing was logical because, as you said, there was nothing that could have been done. This might have happened to anyone, but it's tragic in a sense that I feel like it could have been stopped if it would have been properly been done on the first trial that they had. She only got 1 day in the first one because it wasn't a major thing, but they could have seen that maybe this should have been evaluated properly. And that's also what Glenn said, the brother of the brother who died, Gary's brother. Yeah. That if it would have been recognized earlier, it wouldn't have been an issue, because then nothing would have happened, because she would have been evaluated and treated. And hence why the justice system kind of failed them, because they allowed someone who wasn't properly, been taken care of, or being evaluated. And that's also one I wanted to say, that I think that it's a shame that the signs were there, but they minimized it because they didn't think it was that big of an issue. But if now that we have read everything and know a little bit about the reports and such, because they have reported it, but they use it as evidence, obviously, because we know of it, but they still let her be free. Yeah. But also, I think that you should never let a stranger into your house, no matter. That's a fact. Like, no matter what, doesn't have to, like, if you're a man, a woman, like, it doesn't matter. Never let in a stranger into your house who's an adult. If it was a child, that might be a different situation. But I will still never let the child into my house. I will probably sit in the garden with the child, or like outside, until the police will come. So either way, never let a stranger into your household. Call for help, or help the person, or call the police or someone, because she was, I don't know, she was looking for her sister in the hospital. Never, like, he kind of offered her to sleep over and such, and I thought that was very strange. That was very strange. Yeah, even though he's kind and everything, as the brother said, I think that's strange to, like, invite someone to their household and offer them to sleep for the night. I thought that was a little bit weird. I will say this to the audience, at least. If you're thinking about being nice to people, don't. Oh, being nice gets you killed. That's a promise. That being was so nice extreme. Always. I mean, look, I'm being honest here. Look, every story that we've read so far or will read, I promise you, every nice person unfortunately got the short end of the stick because they were nice. Sometimes, and this is coming from a New Yorker, where in New York City we are the kings and queens of minding our own damn business. So we keep it pushing. If we don't know you, we feel like you're moving a little funny, we're going to keep it pushing, because
look, trust me, there's been situations, I've been in situations where literally because I kept moving, I'm alive today because something popped up on the news. I was like, I was just in that area 10 minutes ago. So being nice gets you nowhere. Don't help people unless you're willing to give up your life for someone who might potentially kill you. It sounds dark. It really does. I know it does. It's a sad world that we live in, but it's the reality. And, you know, if you want to live to see your next birthday, I would recommend just keeping your distance, call the cops, call whoever you need to call, and handle your business. But here's another question I have as well.
I just want to say something before we move on. I think that's a little bit extreme in my opinion. I think you can help people, but be mindful and also take care of yourself and always be on your guard when you do those things. But I think that most people have the logical thinking of like not inviting strangers to their house like that. Especially if you live alone, and even if you live with people, you shouldn't do that.
Still don't.
Yeah, don't do that.
Get everybody else killed.
Yeah. So for your own, like, I think most people wouldn't have done that, and that's not about being kind or not. It's about being like logical because you don't know who that person is. So, but you can help people, but be mindful and try to like, you know, do help in whatever way you can, but not in an extreme way. If that makes sense.
Just call the police. Don't even involve yourself. Just call the police. Trust me. I have trauma from 2000 to 2009 New York City. It was a different city when I was in middle school and high school. Anybody from New York, I'm going to say Mermots and Sidekicks, and y'all going to know exactly what I'm talking about. Anyways, but I do have a question. So what if, since the brother confirmed-ish that something was going on, what if there really was someone chasing them? What if the husband or whatever was really pursuing them, and it was really just a coincidence that no one saw him or noticed him because they just didn't know what he looked like?
That would be scary as hell. Then, you know, that would have been scary as hell.
Crazy, right?
But also think about it. If there are multiple reports of someone always chasing you, shouldn't the police take that at least a little bit more seriously in that case?
See, but here's the thing though. By the time that the police had caught up and that they were saying like they were being followed, she already had killed somebody. So at this point, they wouldn't even take her serious because they think she's a delusional one. And if they never had any record of him following them, or they don't know what he looks like, he technically could have been a ghost. Like, not literally, but he just could have been floating under the radar because he wasn't a suspicious moving person. He probably just looked like a regular guy compared to like them two who looked nervous and they were doing very unhinged things. So it's also possible that they really could have been running for their life and
be scared. That's true.
And
the way they acted,
possible.
She was like running away for her life. Like the way she jumped off the bridge and like she did a lot of things like she was running away from something. So it could have been the case. She could have been scared for her life that someone was following her, stalking her. That's a real thing. Stalking and stalkers overall. That's a real thing. So it could have been.
So who's to say? But like I said, the whole point of that is not to challenge science or the facts or whatever happened to everyone in the case. It's just to keep an open mind because, you know, people are affected, unfortunately, by events like this and situations like
this. The victims and also the perpetrator. Yeah. It's a tough one, this one, actually. Yeah.
Got to keep an open mind.
Tragic.
And weigh all possibilities. You know, we got to weigh all our options so that way we can be effective, you know, citizens of the world and also keep each other safe and also help those within reason by calling the cops and keeping your distance. But in general, just we're trying to just bring awareness and keep an open mind about these situations, and also just to convey this information so that way you can know what to look for when you're in a situation similar to this, pay attention to odd behavior, or if someone's stalking you, just situations like that. This is basically what this is for, just to bring awareness to situations like this, so that way it doesn't happen to people like you. So
I think Gary should have honestly seen the signs and probably called someone or help, the way she was acting different and such. So I think that in these situations, observe, try to understand the situation, and do what you can, but not to the degree that you might yourself be hurt.
Exactly.
So
I think this is a good spot to leave it off. So I hope you enjoyed today's discussion and today's story. Feel free to look it up and kind of explore these scenarios yourselves, and we hope to see you next time. What's going to be today's lighthearted ending, by the way? Last time we said bacon pancakes?
I want garlic bread right now.
Ooh, that does sound fire.
It's so good. Ugh, garlic bread, melted butter and
Ooh, garlic butter with crab and lobster. Ooh.
That's some New York shit. I don't even know what's that about. But either way, I would love that. I love crabs. So.
You've had seafood. We've gotten seafood.
I know. I love crabs. I'm not judging it. It's just I was just craving this specific garlic bread. Just eating garlic bread. Have that garlic bread and
with the bread and seafood, you can get all of it.
Yeah.
See, whoever's out there listening, go get yourself some garlic bread, and then go get yourself some garlic butter with some nice seafood. It's delicious. I promise. It's heavenly.
I'm gonna try that with the seafood.
Oh, we will.
Yeah.
But I will see you guys later.
Okay.
Peace out.
Bye.